All right.
Welcome, Doug.
Hey guys, how are you? How's your Wednesday going?
I'm busy, crazy busy, as always.
Keep you out of trouble, Rudy.
Yeah, it does do that. It actually just gets me into a different kind of trouble.
Quicker.
All right. Well, Rudy is 2:01, so we're going
Yes,
to go
sir.
ahead and kick it off here. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to the first of our five-part series of our webinar, Grow Your Exports. This one will be featuring Mr. Rudy Ortiz. My name is Jonathan Bricker, and I'm the chair of the Arkansas District Export Council. In my primary role, I work for Regions Bank located in Bentonville, Arkansas. My banking career started off as an international business development, and now I'm a commercial lender with a focus on helping commercial and industrial businesses located in Arkansas. I want to start today by thanking our sponsors, the Arkansas Economic Development Commission and Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions. Without their support, we would not be able to do nearly the amount of webinars and education pieces that we do. So thank you to the AEDC and AMS. I really appreciate you all joining us today. For those of you that aren't quite sure who the deck is and what we do, allow me to do just a quick introduction. We're a private, nonprofit organization that brings together experienced international business people with potential exporters. Each deck member has been appointed by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce for their real-world expertise in international trade. We have a ton of experience within our council in many different sectors. Now, having said that, we don't necessarily know all the answers, but we can introduce you to someone who does. We are a community of connections within the exporting world. My hope for the day is that you walk away from this webinar with more confidence in your exporting abilities. And if you have any questions throughout the webinar and you don't feel comfortable asking it here, I invite you to reach out to us on our website, exportarkansas.org, and we'll have one of our members reach out to you. So these classes are designed to generate questions as you work through what it takes to successfully send your product or service overseas. They're meant to be high-level overview of some very important parts of becoming exporters. Then, as you're ready to take that next step or just jump right in, the deck will be here to help you in any way possible. Basically, we want to be your strategic partner to help you grow your exports, which helps grow your bottom line. Before we begin, I'd like to ask everyone to keep themselves muted and raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question, or you're welcome to put a question in the chat and we'll be monitoring that as we go along. But that way I'll kind of cut down some of the background noise during the speaking portions. So I'll go ahead and introduce your educator this afternoon, Rudy Ortiz. Rudy is the previous chairman of the deck and the owner of Strategic Business Services LLC, where he helps companies in a wide variety of international business and exporting needs. He assists companies with their foreign market entry efforts into and in the U.S. partner of Global Market Entry Consultants. That's a mouthful. With an MBA in international business, he facilitates various export and supply chain related classes for the deck and is a certified global business professional, as well as a U.S. Department of Commerce certified expert and trade counsel. For these reasons, he is the deck's education chair. Rudy, thank you for putting this on, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate that. Well, very good. So, Ms. Heidi, if we can throw up the entry slides, that would be swell.
Oh, I thought you were going to share your slides. Well,
No, not the entry slides, just my presentation slides.
we're ready for your presentation slides.
Okay, great. Okay, well, very good. Well, let me go ahead and share. Okay, I think, let me see here. Are you guys able to see my first slide?
Yes.
Okay, great, great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, once again, welcome to today's webinar on getting ready to export. And this a series of classes is really ideal for those who are kind of at the early stages of exporting or are thinking of exporting in many cases, and it's something that we'll talk about a little bit later on. You are perhaps what we call reactive exporters, which means that you're getting, calls from, Germany or X country, and they're asking you to ship some product or service to them, and you're doing it that way as opposed to strategically trying to find countries and markets for your products. And we've also, of course, have had people who are actually fairly far along in their exporting journey, but they feel that they really have not gotten all the information they need, and so they attend these classes as well. So this is a pretty comprehensive series of classes for those who are new to exporting and those that just want to learn more, yet have quite a bit of experience. All right. So, in terms of the objectives, obviously, we're going to be discussing exporting business opportunities, of which there are many opportunities out there. We're going to hopefully discuss some basic exporting considerations, things that you really need to know and be looking at in order to be safe in your exporting endeavors. We're hoping for those of you who are brand new to exporting that you're going to get comfortable with the idea of exporting, that it in fact is not risky, that there are ways to mitigate the risk of exporting substantially. Also to hopefully learn some ways to be able to avoid problems as you expand your exports. And we're also going to introduce you to some export related resources. So,
Rudy,
Wyatt, yes, ma'am.
would you like to launch the poll now?
Yes. Thank you so much for reminding me about that. We're going to ask you guys to fill out a very quick poll just to see where you are at in terms of your exporting experience. So if you would take a minute or so to answer that, would really appreciate it. It'll give us a better idea of maybe how to direct some of the comments during the webinar.
Mhm.
So what do you think, Heidi? Or has everyone had an opportunity to fill that out?
Yeah, you got almost half the people, so
Okay. Well, we'll give them another minute and see if the other ones might be interested in providing that information.
all right, you're over 50% now.
All right.
So
All righty. I think we'll go ahead and move on.
all right.
Okie
Next.
dokie. So, why export? Well, you see this. Let me see here. Oh, okay. So, apparently, about 25% of the people who took the poll uh, have not started exporting, and 13% they've started their business plan but are not exporting, and 63% are already exporting, which kind of goes back to my comment that we have a lot of people who are already exporting, but they feel like there's new stuff to learn, and this is good. Let me see here. All righty. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Well, so as it turns out, as you can see from this chart, the U.S. World population, or the U.S. population, makes up about 4.2% of the world's population, which means that about almost 96% of the world of the world's population is outside of the United States. So we're missing a tremendous market if all we're doing is trying to sell our products or services in the United States alone. You're missing a tremendous market, and we're going to talk about reasons why this really makes a difference. Okay, so here are some reasons for exporting. Obviously, it provides global opportunities for your products and services, and helps you increase your revenues and profits. Um, Also, as you become better known globally, it gives you even more credibility and more opportunities to expand your sales and your revenues. It also increases the company's productivity because as you learn how to export and increase the capacity of your production, it's going to really force you to become more productive and more efficient. And so there's all sorts of advantages to do that. This next one is kind of interesting to me as well. New product innovations. I remember several years ago when I went to Italy for the first time, I saw this machine at this cafe, and they were actually making orange juice, and they were using a piece of equipment to extract the orange juice from the oranges that I had never seen before. It was something apparently that the Europeans were using that we were not using, as best as I could tell, anywhere in the United States. And so you get ideas from doing exporting and traveling to other countries about product innovations or maybe ways that you can change it. You might see products that are developed by your competition that give you some additional ideas about how you can improve your own product or services. And also, there's potential tax advantages. Now, unfortunately, none of this comes for free, so to speak. In order to be able to export, you're going to need to have certain internal to the company, internal resources that are going to allow you to increase or to start exporting. You're going to need additional human resources. You're going to need additional financial resources, and within other departments, you're going to need their help as well. You're going to need the help from the accounting and from the warehousing and on and on and on. So there are going to be some demands put on your company that if you're not exporting at all, don't exist right now. So it is really important to recognize that if you want to increase your sales internationally, it is going to require you to increase all these different internal resources that might not be the case right now. Okay. The other thing that you have to also take into consideration is in terms of the organization itself. In a minute here, we'll be talking about the product itself. But right now, organizationally, does your company have a product or service that you can export? And I think that most companies, certainly most manufacturers, do in fact have a product that they can export, and in many cases, the service industries also have products that can export. And for those of you who are in services, that is actually the fastest growing part of exports in the United States. Another thing that's going to be really important is for you to develop an export plan. Just jumping in without looking is not a good idea. And we'll talk about that a little bit more about the why. Does your company have sufficient commitment to increase your production? I mean, it's one thing it's nice to say, well, we want to export, but the reality is that the equipment that you have and the financial withdrawal to be able to spend more money on increased production may not be there. And you need to recognize that if you're going to increase your sales, it may very well require you to have additional people, additional equipment, certainly additional financial resources. My own research has kind of indicated that unless you're very, very inefficient, it's extremely hard to increase production without additional headcount or capacity, much more than 15%. And so, once again, once you've increased production by more than 15%, it's almost certainly going to require additional human resources, financial resources, and also production resources. Is your company willing and able to dedicate resources? That's going to be once again very, very important. And a little bit later on, I'll tell you a personal story that I've experienced, why this is really important. Once again, none of this comes free. Does anyone in your company have international experience? While that's not required, obviously it certainly is useful for you to have somebody that has some level of international experience. Also, in terms of the products as opposed to the organization, do you believe that you have products or services that you can export? Is there a demand for your products and services outside of the U.S.? In many cases, we have orders that we receive from some foreign country. They've looked you up on Google and found out that you provide X products or services, and they place orders. And even though you're not doing it strategically, you're doing it reactively, reactive to someone from Germany, just as an example, uh, saying, "Hey, I'd like you to ship me or provide me, sell me your product or service." Is there a demand already? And something that people really miss out is in the Google Analytics. By looking at your Google Analytics in terms of your website, you can see where other countries or people from other countries are looking at your product or services. And this is a great tool that people miss out on to see if there is interest on your products or services uh, elsewhere outside of the United States. Do your products have some unique features? Obviously, you don't want to be just a me too, because generally speaking, whenever you're just a me too and there's really nothing unique about your product, you're probably going to have to sell on price, and that's never a good idea. Will your products need to be modified or your services need to be modified? In many cases, when you have certain products, you're going to have to, maybe, especially if they're have some sort of electrical needs. In most other countries throughout the world, they use a different electrical requirements than what we use in the United States, and so you would need to make your products be able to adapt to the electrical requirements of those countries. And usually it's a very, very small modification, but it is a modification. And like most other things, that will require some money to be able to make those modifications to the equipment that you plan to sell outside of the United States. In terms of services, for instance, you could be a software provider, and there are requirements that, for instance, the EU and other countries as well have in terms of software products that we sell here in the United States, and do not currently have some of those same requirements. So looking at what changes you're going to have to make to your product or services is really, really important. Okay, so the importance of market research for exporting. Once again, I kind of mentioned a little while ago, it may very well be that you're already selling to foreign countries. I gave the example of somebody from Germany or Spain or some other country will contact you and say, "Hey, we saw that you sell X, Y, and Z on Google, and we'd like you to ship us this product or sell us this service." And so that is what we call reactive. In other words, you weren't seeking those sales, that you don't have a strategy, but you're still selling because you're getting orders. Well, obviously that's a good thing. But if what you want to do is really increase your sales, you're going to have to develop an export strategy. And doing the market research is going to be extremely important for you to be successful. Once again, just choosing just any old country without doing the market research is not a good thing. And I will give you a great example: Brazil. So Brazil is one of my best examples because, when you look at it from a marketing perspective, man, it's like huge population, big middle class. They like to buy great stuff. What's not to like? Well, plenty. So as it turns out, Brazil has 100% tariffs on almost all American goods. And so that means that if your widget costs $500, just going into Brazil is going to cost $1,000. And so the likelihood that it's going to be price competitive with the Brazilian market is minimal. And they also have a lot of other issues. For instance, internally in Brazil, the interest rates for, if I'm a Brazilian and I want to go to my bank to borrow money to buy your widget, the rates have been for many years 35% APR. We complain about 7 and 8% in this country, but they have been at 35% and more per year in Brazil for a long time. So that's an obstacle as well. Intellectual property, if you're going to sell some sort of product into Brazil that is very innovative, it may very well be that you want to protect it with a patent. Well, realistically, it takes about 10 years to get a patent in Brazil versus 2.5 years or less in the United States. So there's lots of things that are going on with Brazil that make it not a suitable market for U.S. products. That's why you've got to really do the research to make sure that you don't spend a lot of time trying to sell into markets where that maybe those kind of products just don't sell well, or there are barriers to entry. All these things that I just mentioned a little while ago, those are all barriers to entry. And so doing the research to find out the best markets is really important. Okay, so some of the things that you're gonna, want to do research on is, what products are most likely to sell. It may very well be that you have several products, but some are more ideal to foreign markets than others. Identifying particular market segment and niches, very important. And a lot of times we want to. Who do you want to sell? Well, I want to sell to everybody. Well, that's not realistic, and really trying to sell to everybody is extremely difficult. It's much better from a marketing perspective, and this is true in the United States as it is elsewhere. You want to be able to find and target to those markets and those market niches that are going to be the most receptive to your products or services. Obviously, you want to be able to determine both the domestic and international competitors. Domestic meaning to the country that you're looking at, and also other competitors that are already selling into that country. You're going to want to discover and overcome the barriers to entry, like I was highlighting with Brazil previously. Every country is different. Every country has some level of barriers, and some much more than others. Once again, like Brazil, and other countries have very low barriers to entry. And so you have to do the research to find out which are going to be the easiest, most profitable, most likely to succeed countries rather than others. Obviously, understanding customer needs and accommodating them as needed is going to be important. I mentioned earlier that it may very well be that the country that you're looking at is going to require some sort of modification to your product or service. And obviously we want to accommodate them if we can, in order to be able to be successful and to really understand those customers. The world is different everywhere else. If you go into exporting and international business with the idea that the rest of the world is exactly like the United States or largely like the United States, you're going to be wrong most of the time. Other countries have different customs, different needs, different financial realities, different marketing realities, different infrastructure realities, and you got to know what those are. Otherwise, your success is going to be highly limited. Uh, Identifying new trends, not only in the United States but globally, are going to be very important. It could be that you have a product that maybe 2 years ago wasn't viable in some country, and today, because maybe of a change in infrastructure, a change in trends and a change in product competitiveness, technology. It could be that now your products are part of the trend, and that a country that was not viable before is viable now. Determining your price competitiveness, once again, in some countries, in many cases, we don't think anything about spending, $1,000 for some product, a TV or whatever. But in many countries, those prices are just not the doable in other countries. And we just have to understand, what sort of price competition we would have to hit. Is this the best country given the price that we need to sell at? Is this a viable country given the financial and economic and demographic dynamics of that country? And obviously, we want to pick those countries that the answer is yes. So some of the things that you're going to have to look at as you're doing the market research, as always, the political and government stability. Trying to sell into countries that are unstable is really, really, really risky, and so that's something you have to take into consideration. Cultural and business practices. Once again, folks, do not assume that the way it's done in our country is the way it's done in other countries. That's not true. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I tell my clients and my students is that if you start with the automatic assumption that it is different wherever you're looking at, you're going to be right almost every single time, because there is going to be some things that are going to be different, no matter what other things are similar. For instance, we look at the UK. And Australia, I mean, cousins of ours, right? And you would think that they do business exactly the way we do. It isn't so. And so we have to look at the nuances of each country to make sure that we do those things that are going to be the best fit, and make accommodations, changes if they're required in order to be successful in that country. Obviously, looking for partners, distributors, and such is going to be important to the success of many business endeavors. It may very well be, and it's likely the case that the way that you'll start is by having distributors in the country to distribute your products or services, as opposed to you physically having a physical presence in those countries. And so trying to find partners that have the same sort of ethics is going to be very important, and that they do business and are willing to do business the way that meets your requirements, going to be very important. So relationships and the development of relationships are critical in going into other countries. There are market entry issues, as we discussed also. You have to take a look at the taxes and duties, as I was mentioning with Brazil, 100% tariffs on almost all American products. There are import license requirements in many cases, inspections, and on and on. There's just a multitude of things that you have to pay attention to so that you don't run into problems. Demographics and the distribution of and population of age and income, as I mentioned earlier. There are some, if you're selling products that are for geriatrics like myself, and the country has a very small population of those kind of people, maybe that's not the best country. Also, the income that I mentioned earlier, those are issues that you have to take a look at. There's a multitude of issues that you have to look at to make sure that the countries that you're looking at are the best fit, not the worst fit. Later on, we may look at more challenging markets, but when you're trying to get into exporting, or you're trying to go into the next country, given that you're already exporting, we want to choose those countries that are going to be the best fit. The other thing that you can't overlook is the infrastructure, the ease of moving products and around physically. The roads, the ports, the airport, the communication systems. There are some countries that the physical infrastructure is such that moving products around is very difficult. Here in the United States, We've had the road system, a nationwide road system since the 40s because of World War II, and we take it for granted the roads and the ability to get from one part of the United States into another with great ease. Flying. Excuse me, uh, Ali. I think you're not muted. So the ability to get on an airplane and go from one part of the country to another, those are things that we take for granted here. That is not the case in many countries. The roads may not be good roads to be able to ship in terms of distribution from one part of the country to the other. So once again, those things are things you need to look at: per capita income, the rate of economic growth, the stage of the country's economic development. Those are all things that you need to look at in the case of every country that you're going to investigate. So there are lots and lots of resources, market research availability. Trade.gov is a great one, and that's obviously a public research database. And CIA, the CIA.gov is another great resource, and they're just a multitude of free resources to be able to get information about the different countries. There are also, private, that ones that you have to pay for, like Data Mine and many others that will give you some deeper dives on in terms of suppliers and things like that. So there are lots of resources to be able to that you can access to be able to get a lot of information. As always, you can come to the District Export Council, as Jonathan stated a little bit earlier, and try to talk to one of us that may be able to give you more guidance, more information. I do this for a living. I'm an international consultant, and so I'm happy to talk to you about things that you might need to consider, and databases that you might be able to access to do the market research. Okay, so once again, once in a while, I will get somebody who's actually not doing well in terms of their domestic business, and they think that if they start exporting, that it's going to save them, and nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, that's going to be like the final nail in the coffin. I mean, you have to have a sound financial, standing in order to be able to export. For instance, this is kind of a long-term play. It's not like in the United States, some company in Wisconsin needs a pump. My pump uh, fits the requirements that they're putting out. I contact the guys in Wisconsin. It meets all the requirements, and the price is right, and so the guys in Wisconsin buy my pump. Just like that. It doesn't work like that hardly anywhere else in the world. And part of that reason for the difference is the legal system that exists in the United States versus most of the rest of the world. And so this is a long-term play. You're not going to fly into a country and come back with a PO. That is highly unlikely. You really need to understand that you're going to have to sacrifice short-term profits for long-term profits, and it's going to require an investment in time, in people, and in money, and money to modify your product if that's what's required. And so this is a longer term play. Once again, folks, I really can't overemphasize this, that you're not going to jump on a plane and go to Mexico and come back with a PO. It's highly unlikely. Okay. Obviously, there's going to be additional expenses in terms of travel and administrative costs. You're going to have to hire additional staff. And as a matter of fact, the one thing that is really important, sometimes I see people trying to use the salespeople that are making domestic U.S. sales to be the same people who are doing international. It does not work. You're going to have a separate staff that has some background in international, can speak foreign languages, are culturally adapt to doing business internationally, because culturally we're very different than other countries. And so you're going to have to hire additional people. That requires more money. You're going to have to spend money on developing appropriate marketing materials and modifying your website for those countries that you're trying to do business in. You're going to have to comply with international standards, as I mentioned earlier. You're going to have to get export licenses and permits. Sometimes you have to take into consideration foreign currency fluctuations and paying attention to that if you're going to try to do business internationally in their currency, which can be a real advantage. But once again, it's something that you have to pay attention to if you're going to do that. You're almost certainly going to have to seek additional financing. And luckily, there's the SBA, the Small Business Administration, can work with your bank to get international financing. There's the XM Bank, which is a U.S. government agency as well. And so in any way that you do it, if you're going to increase your sales and you're going to have more people, more equipment, more X, you're going to have more money. Okay, so one of the things that, or a couple of the things that you have to look at, or is the value of developing an export plan, is in many cases, management may say, we're thinking of looking at exporting, but Bob and Jill, I want you to develop an export plan so that we can make a decision whether we want to do that or not. And if you do all the things that we've just been talking about, it's going to allow you the mechanism for developing a plan so that you can sell management on going ahead and doing the exporting. Or it could be the answer not to do the exporting. Once you have decided to do the exporting, you've developed the export plan. It's a plan of execution, and so it allows you to stay focused on the business objectives. It's going to allow you to grow sales and make more money because you've chosen the right markets, you've chosen the right target market, you've chosen the right methodology for executing, the right distributors, the right X to make sure that it's going to be a profitable endeavor. And in many cases, like I said, management has to buy in, and we'll talk about more about that in just a minute. Steps for creating an export plan is the analysis part is identifying your products and services that might be good products for other countries. For instance, it could very well be that you have a product or service that you are kind of backing away from because you have a new version of the product or service. You don't just want to just throw the off switch on your existing product or service. It may very well be that your product or service is very valuable and adaptable and acceptable to some country that perhaps doesn't need the latest and greatest product or service, and your legacy product or service may be great in another country. And so here's a way to be able to extend the shelf life, so to speak, of your products and services by selling into other countries that your product and service is just great. It absolutely meets their needs, and you can continue to make revenues from your legacy products or services while you expand your market with your new stuff, your new products or services in the United States and perhaps other countries that do require the latest and greatest. So don't overlook that. Target markets, once again, I've been teaching the planning, the developing an export plan for many years now. And almost always we can come up with 2 or 3 countries that are really the best target markets at this time. But you want to, there'll be like a number 1, number 2, and number 3. There'll be one country that really should be the next country out of the 3, and then maybe a little bit later on, you start selling into 2 and 3 and on and on. So, identifying those markets and figuring out which are the most viable, going to be very important to do. Identifying the market strategy for each country. Each country is very different. It may, here in the United States, we have larger houses, more storage spaces, bigger refrigerators, bigger, cabinets and whatnot. And so we go to Costco and we buy the supersize X, Y, and Z. In many countries, if not most countries, that is not the case. They have smaller houses, smaller refrigerators, less storage space, and they do not buy, large. They buy packets instead of big bottles of X, Y, and Z. They buy packets, also because it's cheaper for them to spend at one time. We may be willing to spend, $20 or $30 at one time to get the supersize whatever, and they may only have a couple of dollars to do that. So you really got to pay attention to the country and how they buy those kinds of products and where they buy them at. Logistics, shipping, financing, other resources. If you've got products that may need repair from time to time, how are you going to make that happen? Obviously, sending and I'm just being absurd here, but sending a refrigerator back from Germany back to the United States to get repaired is not a viable alternative. I used to own an IT company many, many years ago when I was a young guy, and we had companies that were in other countries and in other parts of the United States that would contract with my company to do the repair work for those companies because that was the most financially feasible and time feasible thing to do. So those are things that you have to take into consideration. How do you measure success? And once again, how can you get the most out of your distributors? Choosing the right distributor is critical, absolutely critical to the success of your endeavor. In terms of the categories or line items that you're going to need in your business plan, an executive summary, of course, it summarizes tells about what is summarizes really kind of the whole plan, just a couple of paragraphs. Is this going to make us money? What's the background analysis? In other words, how did we come to the conclusion that Germany was the best market for us to go to? You're going to have to identify the market analysis and how the plan of execution. How much money you're going to have to spend and what you expect back in terms of the financial analysis, the export policy commitments, you know, the agenda, and also one of the things that just is incredibly important is to make sure that the executives sign off, that they approve the very idea that we may want to go international. I remember probably 12 years ago or so, I was working with a company here in Little Rock. They make air conditioning systems, about a $50 million company. And so the sales manager contacted me and said, "Hey, we want to develop an international plan for selling to whatever country is the best." And so I started working with him, thinking that he had already had the discussion with management, and we spent time and money developing this marketing plan, this export plan, only to find out that the owners of the company did not want to go international. They were unwilling to spend the money to delay revenues and profits and whatnot for some, extended period of time, in order to break into the international business. I mean, it was just a no-go from management's perspective. It was a total no-go. They weren't willing to wait. They weren't willing to hire more people. They weren't willing to spend more money. They weren't willing to do anything. Um, and so this sales manager, of course, was very excited about the idea of trying to sell and increase the revenues of the company, but he did not get management's okay in terms of even looking at this option. So that is really, really important. Okay, and so I wrote the AC company example, which is the one that I just gave you just now. Okay, so one of the things that I kind of getting into closing here is, if you guys will download this basic guide to exporting that is put together by the U.S. Commercial Service, it's a wonderful, wonderful book that you guys need to have as a resource. Probably going to be one of your primary resources in trying to figure out how to develop a plan and the things that you ought to be looking at. And so if you guys will take this information down and download the book, it's going to be very important. In terms of the discussion that we're having right now, Chapter 1, Introduction, the world is open for your business, basically what we're covering right now. That the book on Chapter 1 is going to cover selling globally, the help, how, where to get help that's available. The fact is, as I've kind of outlined, that the assumptions that you're working under may not be accurate, and I will say probably are not accurate, and how to go about transforming your business and yourself to do business internationally. It's an exciting thing to do. There's all sorts of profits to be made, but you gotta pursue it carefully, do your research, and take one step at a time, and so seek out both the books and things, websites that have the information, as well as reaching out to the District Export Council and myself, if you wish to discuss any questions that you might have. Okay, so these are some of the frequent questions that we get. What country should I start with? And once again, the research will show you which will be your best markets. If my product does not sell here, should I turn to exporting? Absolutely not. Don't do that. Unless, once again, unless it's a product that is already because it's old technology, old whatever, and there's new technology that's come into the market, and that's what's selling. Once again, your old legacy products may very well sell extremely well in other countries that do not require, are not at the point in their development that they need the latest and greatest. That's the only time that you might want to consider selling products that are no longer selling in the United States. But if your product is just not has never sold well in the United States, then trying to export them is probably a mistake. Should I just buy a plane ticket and jump in the plane and go make cold calls? No, don't do that. That's a really big mistake. It doesn't work that way in those countries. Your credibility, and you're going to spend a lot of money and have either no success or get hooked up with the wrong people that is going to cause you problems. Should I get started selling if I have a contact in the foreign country? Well, maybe it depends on who that country contact is. If it's a distributor that's already selling your kind of products or services, maybe so. But be very, very wary of people that contact you and say, "Hey, we want to be the exclusive distributor for X, Y, and Z product." That's almost always a mistake, unless it's a really, really small country. Assuming just for a second that they are legit. Making somebody an exclusive distributor in a anything other than a really small country is almost always a mistake. Okay, I mean, if it's a really small country, Guatemala maybe, but Lithuania and things like that maybe so. But if we're talking about a bigger country, uh, the chances that one person can handle all the sales for a larger country, highly unlikely. And in many countries, you have, like, just strictly an example, India. India is a huge country and has a multitude of cultures within that country, and the way that business is done in one part of the country versus another, totally, totally different. And so the fact that distributor A is going to be able to be the distributor for all the entire country, highly unlikely. Okay. My customer is asking for free samples. What should I do? Well, it depends. I mean, obviously if they're not very expensive, maybe so. But once again, is this a potential distributor, or is it just Joe Blow that wants some free products? So once again, you have to pay attention as to what is the likely outcome of you doing that, and what is the cost to you, and is this going to further your business in any way, shape, or form? How can I find out if my foreign customer is reliable? Great question. So as it turns out, the U.S. Commercial Service has, and as well as the U.S. embassies, have a great program that's called the Gold Key program, and they have other programs as well, where if somebody contacts you from Saudi Arabia or whatever and says, "Hey, we're interested in your product," they can actually check out the embassy and the commercial service people in Saudi Arabia, and I'm just using that as an example, can check out these people, check the banking sources of these people, go to the company to see if it's real and what's really going on there. And so there's a lot of ways to be able to find out if somebody who's calling you and contacting you about um, being potentially a distributor or buying your products is legit or not. So there's no reason why you shouldn't talk to these people, but then do the research, because getting it wrong is difficult. I will tell you, unlike the United States, if I sign up a distributor for my widget in the United States, and that person doesn't perform, I can pull my products from him quickly, easily, legally, with no problem at all. That is not the case in other countries. In many countries, once you sign a distribution contract with some companies, the laws in that country can make it extremely difficult to end the relationship. Okay. And so once again, you got to pay attention to all these things, the legal system. You hire an attorney here in the United States that also has a partnership with somebody in the country that you're considering to go over some of these issues. Once again, many of us here in the District Export Council have a lot of experience and can talk to you about those countries and some of the things that you might want to consider. So once again, choosing distributors is a really serious business. So be very careful with that. Okay, Miss Heidi, do we have, because I don't see them at this point, do we have any questions from the participants at this time?
There we go. Let me unmute there. Yeah, we had a couple questions in the chat about banking, and the question was Arkansas banks that deal with Exim Bank, and I believe it's Regions and Arvest off the top of my head. Do you know of any others?
Well, here's the thing. Hopefully I won't offend anybody, but it is what it is. If you ask almost any bank whether they do business internationally or whether they make loans for international business, almost all of them will tell you that they do. But here's the reality: is in order to do international business in terms of the banks, it requires different kinds of resources and different expertise. And there's really only five or six banks here in Arkansas that meet that criteria, that either have their own international departments or have relationships with bigger banks that do. And so just kind of be aware that that is the case. You'll want to investigate, really whether they really have the capacity to support your business. And it's going to be really important to do business with a bank that is comfortable and is used to and has already made lots of loans for international companies or companies that are doing business internationally, because a lot of companies, they just don't feel comfortable in taking those kinds of risk, and they just don't understand international business and how it's conducted. And so it may very well be that you're with a bank that is not going to be able to help you. And so, you're going to wind up needing to have a relationship, develop a relationship with a bank that does have an international department, or at the very least has a relationship with a bigger bank that does have those capacities, because you're going to need those financial resources that a bank are going to be able to help you with.
Right. And the other question was just what are the advantages of exporting versus importing?
Well, obviously, those are two really different things. I mean, the exporting, you're doing it because you've got something to export, right? It may very it may very well be that you're not a manufacturer, you're not a developer of some software product that you could export. but you're looking to make money from international business, and importing is certainly one of the ways to do that. Maybe you're able to buy stuff from other countries that you think would be attractive in the United States, whether it's a widget or whether it's some service or software product. Importing, that's the way it works. In terms of exporting, the assumption is that you have something that can be sent to another country. Now, having said that, a lot of companies, what they will do is they will make some sort of a product that is actually used as part of a bigger product, that and that company that has the complete product is the one that's actually exporting. So you would be exporting indirectly, and obviously that's a really good way to start if you can. Are you making the kind of product that is used as a component in some larger product with a company that is exporting to other countries? I mean, that's really good, because if you're not currently doing that and all of a sudden you're able to sell to companies that do export, that's a really good and safe way to start the exporting journey. Because ABC company here in the United States that's selling to Egypt, they're going to pay you in US dollars, and they're here in the United States and all of that. You can meet with them very easily, the low cost and all of that. And so obviously that's a good way to start. But that's the difference between importing and exporting. With importing, you don't have anything to send out. You're bringing stuff in.
Yeah. Here's some useful resources. Shoot, it's coming up. There we are. Yeah. So I will be sending out these PowerPoints so that you can use all of the information. These are just some of the resources, a few of the resources that we have available for exporting education.
Yeah, and Miss Heidi, while since you've got this slide up, and this is a great slide in terms of the information that's on there. For those of you who are not aware, the DEC, the Arkansas District Export Council, has a YouTube channel where we have listed all the different webinars that we've done over the time, including this one probably in a few days. And you can always go there as a resource to be able to get information on a wide variety of exporting topics that we've done webinars in the past. But like Ms. Heidi was saying, these are all organizations and resources that you can utilize to get additional information about a wide variety of things. And also, I mentioned it earlier, do look at CIA.gov. That's a great website to find a lot of really good information as well.
And probably the best person for Arkansas exporters is this guy.
Yeah. So yeah, Rick Duda. So as it turns out, Rick is going to hopefully be talking to us about the Export Assistance Center next week. As you guys know, we're going to have 4 more webinars on exporting as part of this Grow Your Exports series. And so make sure that you register for those other classes that you want to attend. But Rick is going to hopefully be with us next week to talk a little bit about the U.S. Commercial Services and the Export Assistance Centers that he heads up here in Arkansas. And this is the contact information for Rick and myself and Jonathan Bricker, who was the young man that spoke early on, and Miss Heidi, who you see here as well. So feel free to contact any one of us with any questions that you might have that we were unable to answer at this time. I'd like you guys, if you please would, to do this follow-up survey. This is the only way that we know whether, we did a good job on this webinar, or whether we need to make adjustments to the programs that we're putting on your behalf. So if you would take a minute to do the follow-up survey, would really appreciate it. And Ms. Heidi, do we have anything else?
I think that's everything. Yeah.
Okay.
This week will be William Burgess of Power Technology. He's a very experienced exporter of his lasers. So you will enjoy talking with William.
Yeah, we have the next 4 classes. We've got some really great practitioners, people who own their own businesses and are exporting X, Y, and Z products and services. And so you're going to learn a lot from the guys that are coming up to cover the various topics that we're covering. And so once again, if you guys would please go ahead and fill out the survey, and then we can exit.
Yeah. And don't